The brace position you are shown on every commercial flight is a physical simulation of what a rear-facing seat does automatically. Airlines teach you to imitate the safer configuration rather than install it. That is not a coincidence. And it is not because they did not know. Aviation crash tests have returned the same result for 60 years. Rear-facing seats distribute impact forces across the entire back, shoulders, and head simultaneously. Forward-facing seats concentrate those forces at the lap belt and harness contact points, while the head travels through a significant arc before it is stopped. The data has never been disputed. The industry has always known which seat survives a crash better. Every commercial aircraft you have ever flown has forward-facing seats. This video explains exactly why. The physics, the military evidence that confirmed the data, the specific reasons commercial aviation rejected the safer seat, and what actually changed that makes the answer more complicated than most people assume. The physics begins with what a sudden deceleration event actually does to a human body. In a forward-facing seat, the passenger's body continues moving forward at the moment of impact until the harness catches it. The lap belt locks against the pelvis. The shoulder strap catches the chest. The head continues forward independently until the neck and harness slow it down. The energy transfer is concentrated at specific points, and the arc the head travels through is where serious injuries occur in survivable crashes. That word is worth pausing on. Survivable. The seat design question only matters in crashes where the aircraft structure remains intact enough that the occupants could theoretically walk away. In a catastrophic, high-speed impact, no seat configuration changes the outcome. The engineering debate is entirely about crashes that are survivable in structural terms, but become fatal because of what happens to the occupant inside the cabin. Studies of aviation accident data consistently show that a significant proportion of fatalities in otherwise survivable crashes involve head and upper body injuries consistent with forward motion against restraints. These are the deaths that seat orientation directly affects. In a rear-facing seat, there is no archy. The seat back is already behind the passenger. The entire rear surface of the body contacts the seat simultaneously at the moment of impact. The load distributes across the back, shoulders, and the back of the head. There is no forward momentum to arrest, because the seat structure is already absorbing it. This is the same principle behind rear-facing infant car seats. The physics does not change with the size of the vehicle or the speed of the impact. A larger surface, absorbing load simultaneously, is structurally superior to a harness catching a moving body at 2 or 3 contact points. The brace position exists because aviation engineers understood this completely. Tucking forward, head down, hands braced, body compacted, it mimics the rear-facing position as closely as a forward-facing seat allows. It is an engineering workaround for a problem that a different seat orientation would eliminate entirely. The military did not use workarounds. The British Royal Air Force flew rear-facing passenger seats as standard configuration on the Vickers VC-10 transport aircraft for decades. The VC-10 entered service in 1966 and continued flying with the RAF until 2013. 47 years of operational rear-facing passenger transport across thousands of flights carried personnel into and out of some of the most demanding operating environments in the world. The RAF ran their own testing, reached the same conclusions the civilian crash data had already reached, and made rear-facing the default. The safety record over those 4 decades gave them no reason to reconsider. Other military transport operators reached the same conclusion through their own testing. The evidence was clear enough that the people responsible for transporting personnel did not hesitate. Commercial aviation saw the same evidence. The decision that followed was different. The first problem was not engineering, it was passengers. When commercial airlines tested rear-facing configurations in the 1950s and 60s, passenger response was consistently negative. People complained about the discomfort of watching the cabin recede rather than approach on a long flight. They worried about motion sickness from seeing turbulence effects before feeling them, rather than after. They felt a psychological unease at not being able to see the direction of travel. Most of these concerns were not supported by medical evidence. Motion sickness rates in rear-facing seats are not significantly higher than in forward-facing ones, but passenger perception determined purchasing behavior, and airlines responding to what passengers would actually book could not ignore it. The second problem was cost. Not the cost of the seats themselves, but the cost of what changing them required. Rear-facing seats in a commercial aircraft are not a straight substitution. The floor attachment points are different. The structural load paths through the fuselage are different. The certification process for the entire cabin configuration restarts. For a single wide-body aircraft, the retrofit cost runs into the millions. Across a fleet of hundreds of aircraft, the number becomes one that no airline could justify to shareholders without a regulatory mandate requiring it. That mandate never came, and the reason it never came is the third part of the answer. In 1988, aviation authorities introduced a new seat certification standard. The previous standard required seats to withstand 9 times the force of gravity. The new standard raised that to 16 times gravity, with a specific head injury criterion that required testing to be passed before certification was granted. What that head injury criterion actually required changed how forward-facing seats were engineered from the ground up. Seatbacks were redesigned, with energy-absorbing materials that deform progressively under impact, rather than transferring force rigidly into the occupant. Floor attachment fittings were strengthened and repositioned. The geometry of the seat structure was recalculated to manage the head arc problem more effectively. A forward-facing seat certified to the 16G standard is a fundamentally different object from the one it replaced. The 16G standard changed the calculation significantly. Forward-facing seats built to the new standard are genuinely very safe. They are not as safe as rear-facing seats in the worst survivable impact scenarios, but the gap between the two configurations narrowed considerably after 1988. The engineering case for mandatory conversion weakened at the same time the financial case against it remained unchanged. Regulators looked at the cost of requiring every airline to refit every aircraft, weighted against the marginal safety gain over seats that were already meeting a substantially higher standard than before, and concluded the mandate was not justified. The result is the aircraft cabin that exists today. Every seat on every commercial flight you take meets the 16G certification standard. The seat will hold in a survivable crash at forces far beyond what most accidents produce. It is not the safest possible configuration. It is the safest configuration that the combination of passenger psychology, retrofit economics, and regulatory judgment produced over 60 years of decisions that each made sense individually. The brace position card in the seat pocket in front of you is the clearest summary of all of it. The industry knows exactly what the body needs to do in an impact. They put it on a laminated card and teach it to every passenger before every flight. The safer seat was always an installation decision, not an engineering one. The engineering was settled in the first crash test. Everything that followed was everything else.